So, have you ever um, found yourself standing outside on just a perfectly clear, dark night,
Oh, yeah.
and you're looking up at the stars, and suddenly, instead of feeling awe, you just feel like completely, utterly terrified?
Right, by the sheer scale of it all.
Exactly, by the sheer crushing silence of the universe. Or, I mean, maybe on a more everyday level, have you ever felt uh, this inexplicable crawling anxiety the exact second you put your phone down in a quiet room?
Oh, that is so common. Yeah.
You know that feeling, right? It's this immediate, almost biological urge to just pick the screen right back up.
Anything to stop the quiet.
Right. To open an app, to do absolutely anything just to make the quiet go away.
Eh.
And if you are nodding your head right now listening to this, if you're feeling a little bit called out, I mean, you are definitely not alone.
Not at all.
In fact, you're experiencing something that one of history's absolute greatest minds diagnosed, well, almost 400 years ago. So welcome to the deep dive.
So glad to be here.
Today, we are talking directly to you about the restless soul. And we've got a really fascinating stack of sources to guide us today.
We really do. It's incredible material.
Yeah, we are looking at a collection of fragments, notes, and devotionals based on Blaise Pascal's masterwork, the Pensées.
Which is just a monumental text.
It is. And the mission of this deep dive is to explore Pascal's profound, unfinished thematic architecture, basically regarding the human condition.
Right.
Specifically, we're going to unpack this intense dialectic between our awe-inspiring greatness and our devastating wretchedness.
And it is a remarkable journey we're going on today. But I think to really grasp the weight of these fragments, we first need to establish exactly who Blaise Pascal was.
Yeah, because he's not your typical historical figure.
No, he defies almost every stereotype of, like, the dusty, cloistered theologian.
Right. When we hear the word theologian, we usually picture, I don't know, a monk in a stone room.
Exactly, someone disconnected from the real world living in an ivory tower. But Pascal, who was born in 1623 in France, was the exact opposite.
He was a scientist, right?
He was an absolute polymath. He was deeply embedded in the intellectual and scientific revolutions of his day. I mean, we are talking about a true mathematical prodigy.
Wow.
He laid the foundational groundwork for the modern theory of probability.
Wait, really? Like the math we use for statistics today?
Yes, and he invented the mechanical calculator.
In the 1600s? That's insane.
Right. He also did all this pioneering work in physics, specifically regarding vacuums and atmospheric pressure.
Okay, so he's a hardcore STEM guy.
Totally. And he even invented the first public omnibus service in Paris.
Like public transit.
Exactly, the first public transit system. So he was very much a man of the world. He moved in the highest circles of French society, mingling with scientists, aristocrats, and, high-stakes gamblers.
That's quite a crowd.
It was. But alongside this staggering scientific and social resume, he became deeply, deeply involved in a religious movement known as Jansenism.
Okay, I want to pause right there.
Yeah.
Because Jansenism isn't exactly a household word today.
No, it's not.
If I'm trying to picture this, what did it actually look like? Because, a French scientist hanging out with aristocrats and gamblers doesn't naturally scream like religious zealot to me.
Yeah, it's a fascinating juxtaposition. To understand Jansenism, you have to look at the broader picture of 17th century French Catholicism.
Okay, set the scene for us.
At the time, the dominant religious force, especially influencing the French court, was the Jesuit order.
Right, the Jesuits.
And the Jesuits were often seen, fairly or unfairly, as being somewhat accommodating to human frailty.
Meaning they were lenient.
Yeah, they emphasized free will and sometimes practiced a rather lax moral theology, basically to keep the powerful aristocrats in the fold.
Keeping the rich guys happy.
Exactly. So Jansenism was essentially this rigorous, almost Puritan-like revival movement reacting against all of that.
Okay.
It was deeply Augustinian.
Meaning it goes back to the teachings of St. Augustine.
Correct. It placed a massive, just uncompromising emphasis on the absolute corruption of human nature after the fall.
So they didn't think too highly of humanity.
No. For the Jansenists, humans weren't just a little bit flawed, we were structurally shattered.
Wow, structurally shattered.
Yeah. Therefore, they argued for the strict, unavoidable necessity of divine grace for salvation. You couldn't just earn it.
You couldn't just buy your way out.
Exactly. You couldn't just brush off your sins with a quick confession and go right back to partying at the royal court.
That makes sense. It's a major culture clash.
It really was. The movement centered around a convent called Port Royal, which attracted some of the most brilliant, austere minds in France. And Pascal wasn't just like asked casual observer of this movement.
He went all in.
He experienced a profound mystical conversion and became one of Jansenism's most brilliant and fierce defenders.
But his life was incredibly short.
Tragically short, it was marked by intense, chronic physical suffering. He died at the age of 39.
39.
Yeah.
That is just, I mean, considering everything he accomplished, that's wild.
It is. And in the last years of his life, knowing his time was short, he started sketching out notes for a massive, comprehensive apologia.
Like a defense of the Christian faith.
Right, but he never finished it.
He never finished it.
Yeah.
And that's what we have today, right?
Exactly. What we have left are these pensées, which just translates from French as thoughts.
Thoughts.
They're basically stones for a magnificent tower that was never fully built. They were just left there in bundles, tied together with string, for us to try and assemble.
Which, honestly, is exactly what makes reading him so electric.
Oh, completely.
You aren't reading some polished, sterile textbook where every argument is perfectly sanitized. You are reading the raw, unfiltered notes of a genius who is actively wrestling with the abyss.
You can almost feel his mind working on the page.
You really can. And I want to emphasize to you listening right now, do not let the 17th century theological context fool you.
That's a great point.
This isn't just an ancient religious text making abstract points about, I don't know, angels or church dogma. What we have in front of us is a highly psychological, pre-modern diagnosis of existential dread.
Yes. It's incredibly modern in that sense.
Pascal is putting the human mind under a microscope. He's looking at our anxieties, our habits, our avoidance mechanisms. And he's offering a very specific cure for the restless soul.
That framing is crucial. But before we can understand his proposed cure, we absolutely have to spend time in the clinic.
We need the diagnosis first.
Exactly. We have to understand his diagnosis of the patient. If we consider the thematic architecture of the Pensées, the foundational block is the sheer contradictory paradox of human existence.
The paradox.
Right. For Pascal, to be human is to be suspended between two utterly incomprehensible extremes.
Yeah, he uses the spatial framing, right? Drawing on his background as a physicist.
He does. Keep in mind, he's writing right around the time that early telescopes and microscopes are completely shattering the old medieval view of the universe.
Oh, right. They're suddenly seeing how huge the universe is and how tiny the microscopic world is.
Precisely. He says that man is caught between the infinitely great, the vast expanding cosmos, and the infinitely small.
When I was reading through the sources, the analogy he uses to describe this spatial suspension absolutely blew my mind.
The mite analogy.
Yes, he doesn't just say, hey, we're physically small compared to the sun. He asks us to imagine a mite, like a tiny microscopic insect.
It's a masterclass in pushing human cognition to its absolute breaking point.
It really is.
Pascal forces the reader to exhaust their own imagination. He says, okay, look at this tiny mite, now zoom in.
Just keep zooming.
Imagine its minute body. Now imagine its microscopic limbs, the tiny joints in those limbs.
It gets so specific.
It does. Imagine the veins within those limbs, the blood running through those veins,
Yeah.
humors in the blood, the drops in the humors, the vapors in the drops.
Like he's making you physically dizzy.
He divides and divides the physical matter until the human mind literally aches, unable to conceive of anything smaller.
And then, right when you think you've reached the absolute floor of physical reality, right when you hit the smallest conceivable atom, Pascal says, let me show you a new abyss.
He flips the universe inside out.
He does. Inside that submicroscopic atom, he asks us to imagine an entirely new infinity of universes.
Which is just insane to think about.
Each with its own firmament, its own planets, its own Earth, its own animals, and yes, its own mites, repeating endlessly down into the microscopic void.
It is a terrifying fractal of existence.
Terrifying is the perfect word.
And his whole point is that we, as human beings, are trapped right in the middle of this nightmare. We are, as he puts it, a mean between nothing and everything.
Yes, a nothing in comparison to the infinite, and all in comparison to the nothing.
So when you and I look up at the infinite expanse of the stars, like we talked about at the very beginning of the deep dive, we are completely swallowed up. We are nothing compared to the macro universe.
We're practically invisible.
But then when we look down at the microscopic abyss, we are suddenly a colossus. We're an entire universe ourselves compared to the nothingness below us.
And the problem is, we don't fit anywhere.
Right. We are totally disproportionate.
We are infinitely removed from comprehending either extreme. We can't grasp the infinite whole, and we can't grasp the infinite parts.
Because our senses are just too limited.
Exactly. Too much sound deafens us, too much light blinds us, and the spatial suspension perfectly mirrors our existential suspension.
How so?
Well, this realization of our extreme physical fragility leads directly to Pascal's most famous and arguably his most beautiful metaphor for the human condition.
The thinking reed.
Yes. He calls man a thinking reed, or in French, le roseau pensant. He writes, "Man is but a reed, the most feeble thing in nature, but he is a thinking reed."
I just love that image. It is so vivid and so fragile.
It captures it perfectly.
He says the entire universe doesn't even need to arm itself to crush us.
Aha.
A vapor, just a single drop of water, is enough to kill a human being.
It takes so little.
And thinking about this today, I mean, it's incredibly resonant. We build these massive technologically advanced civilizations.
We really think we've conquered nature.
We split the atom, we fly to the moon, we carry supercomputers in our pockets. We think we are basically untouchable.
And then
A microscopic virus swoops across the globe and shuts down the entire planet, forcing everyone into their homes.
a perfect modern example.
Or even on an individual level, just a sudden split-second car accident ends a life just like that. Or a tiny blood clot in the brain brings down a genius. We are unbelievably, pathetically fragile.
We are. But here is the crucial pivot in Pascal's thought. This is where he reclaims human dignity.
Oh, thank goodness, I was getting depressed.
Right. He says that even if the universe were to rise up and crush the human being, even if the ocean were to swallow us whole, the human being would still be nobler than the universe that destroys it.
Wait, why? If the ocean wins the fight and we die, how are we nobler?
Because the human being knows that they are dying. The universe, the ocean, the virus, and all its vast, terrifying power knows absolutely nothing. It is blind, dead matter.
Just the mechanics.
Exactly. All our dignity, Pascal argues, consists in thought. The universe has the advantage of space and physical mass. It physically contains us. But by thought, we comprehend the universe.
So we can map the stars that will eventually outlive us.
Precisely. We understand them, but they don't understand us.
So the very fact that we can stand in our backyards, look up at the silent sky, and be terrified by our own smallness is the exact proof that we are greater than the sky.
Because the stars can't feel existential dread. Only we can.
That's a huge shift in perspective.
Yeah.
But this duality, this incredible soaring capacity for thought, paired with this pathetic physical frailty, it really sets up the core tension of his entire philosophy.
It's the central problem he's trying to solve.
Right. How do we explain a creature that is so brilliant yet so broken?
Which brings us to a fascinating application of Pascal's scientific mind to his theology. He introduces what we might call the empirical proof of original sin.
Okay, empirical. That's a science word.
Yes. And the word empirical is vital here. Pascal, as a pioneer of the scientific method, doesn't treat the biblical doctrine of the fall in Genesis just as a piece of dusty dogma.
Like he doesn't just say, believe it because the priest said so.
Exactly. He looks at it as a working hypothesis. In fact, he argues it's the only logical hypothesis that actually explains the hard data of human experience.
Right, because if we think about it, if we were just naturally evolved animals operating purely on instinct, perfectly adapted to our environment, we wouldn't be so constantly upset about our limitations.
We would just exist like any other animal.
Right. I mean, a dog isn't having an existential crisis on the living room rug because it can't do calculus.
No, it's perfectly happy being a dog.
And a tree isn't depressed because it's eventually going to rot. They're totally at peace with their nature. But humans are constantly miserable, anxious, and dissatisfied. And Pascal asks, well, why?
Why do we feel so thoroughly wretched in our own skin?
Yeah. And what's his answer?
His answer is profound. He says we feel miserable because we have an innate, lingering memory of an uncorrupted state.
A memory of when things were perfect.
Yes. We know we are broken because we intuitively know what it looks like to be whole.
There's a specific analogy in the text for this, isn't there? The deposed king.
Yes, the deposed king. It's brilliant. Pascal writes that a ruined house isn't miserable, it's just a pile of bricks.
It doesn't know it used to be a house.
Exactly. A tree doesn't know itself to be miserable. The only reason we experience misery is because we are, in his words, like a deposed king.
Okay, unpack that for us.
Imagine a monarch who has been violently stripped of his throne. He's been exiled from his palace and forced to wander in poverty. His current poverty hurts infinitely more because he remembers what it was like to live in the palace.
Oh, wow. That makes so much sense.
Pascal argues that humanity is that deposed king. Our constant striving for justice, our thirst for absolute truth, our desperate pursuit of perfect happiness.
They aren't just arbitrary evolutionary quirks.
No. They are the phantom limbs of a soul that was originally designed for communion with God. We have an idea of perfect happiness, but we cannot reach it. We perceive an image of absolute truth, but we possess only uncertainty and lies.
I see exactly where he's going with this. But, if I'm putting myself in the shoes of a skeptical listener right now, I have to push back a little.
Please do.
If Pascal is saying we are all these broken, corrupt, exiled kings wandering in the dirt, does that mean all human achievement is just tainted? Does he think we are completely worthless worms groveling on the earth?
It can sound that way at first.
Because a lot of modern philosophy and psychology tells us, hey, we need self-esteem, we need to recognize human greatness. This whole broken king thing sounds incredibly bleak.
It definitely sounds bleak if you only take half the equation. But Pascal's genius lies in how he critiques the two dominant philosophical schools of his day.
Okay, who were they?
They represent the two extremes of human self-perception. On one hand, you had the Stoics, represented by thinkers like Epictetus.
Right, the Stoics are super popular right now, actually.
They are. And the Stoics looked at human reason, at our capacity for virtue, self-control, noble thought, and they said, look at human greatness. We can master ourselves.
Pull ourselves up by our bootstraps.
Exactly. But according to Pascal, they completely ignored our physical frailty, our mortality, and our inherent inescapable selfishness.
They thought they were better than they actually were.
Right. Because they only looked at the grandeur, the Stoics fell into immense intellectual pride. They thought they were gods.
Ah, I see. And what was the other extreme?
On the other hand, you had the Pyrrhonian skeptics, heavily influenced by people like Michel de Montaigne.
Skeptics.
Yeah, the skeptics looked at our physical weakness, our inability to know ultimate truth with any certainty, our constant moral failures, and they said, look at human wretchedness. We are nothing but confused animals.
But they ignored the greatness.
Exactly. They ignored our capacity for reason and our deep, unyielding longing for the good. Because they only looked at the misery, the skeptics fell into absolute despair and apathy.
So the Stoics are blinded by the light of our greatness, and the skeptics are blinded by the darkness of our misery.
You have grasped it perfectly. Pascal says neither of them has the full picture, and honestly, both are dangerous.
Right, because if you only tell people they are great, they become arrogant tyrants.
And if you only tell people they are wretched beasts, they just give up and live like animals.
So how does he resolve it?
The Christian doctrine of original sin, specifically the dual narrative of creation and the fall, perfectly balances this equation for him. It validates our capax Dei.
Capax Dei.
It's the Latin theological term for the capacity for God. It acknowledges our original structural grandeur as creatures made in the divine image.
But it doesn't ignore the bad stuff.
Exactly. It simultaneously validates our deep corruption, our selfishness, and our wretchedness. We are great because we were made for God. We are wretched because we are alienated from Him. The paradox is resolved.
Okay, that makes incredible logical sense. The hypothesis fits the data perfectly. But let's bring this down to earth for a minute. Let's talk about like a random Tuesday afternoon.
Okay, let's do it.
If that is the diagnosis, that we are all these deposed kings living in a state of fractured misery, constantly aware of a greatness we can no longer access, trapped between the infinite and the microscopic, how on earth do you and I get out of bed in the morning?
That's a fair question.
Right. How is society functioning at all? If the baseline of human existence is this terrifying existential tension, why aren't we all just paralyzed by dread 24/7?
Pascal's answer to that question is horrifyingly simple, and it leads us into one of his most brilliant, devastating psychological concepts.
What is that?
Diversion, or in his native French, divertissement. It is the defense mechanism by which we survive the crushing psychological weight of our condition. Pascal delivers what might be the ultimate, timeless diagnosis of human behavior when he writes, I have discovered that all the unhappiness of men arises from one single fact, that they cannot stay quietly in their own chamber.
They cannot stay quietly in their own chamber. Wow. It is such a famous quote, and it hits so incredibly hard, especially today.
It's so relevant.
He's essentially saying that if we have enough to live on, if our basic needs are met and we are comfortable, we should logically be able to just sit in a room and be perfectly happy. But we can't. We absolutely cannot sit still.
We refuse to.
And the sources point out that we run to all these crazy extremes to avoid sitting still. In his day, it was gambling, warfare, hunting, or constantly socializing at court.
Anything to keep busy.
Today, it's swiping on dating apps, scrolling through social media, binge-watching shows, or even overworking ourselves into burnout. But here is the real kicker that Pascal points out.
Yeah.
We don't actually do these things for the rewards themselves.
No, we don't. And this is where his observation is just so penetrating. We don't hunt because we actually care about catching the rabbit.
Right.
If someone just handed the hunter a dead rabbit at the start of the day, he would be disappointed. He wants the noise of the chase.
And he says the exact same thing about gambling. If you gave a gambler the money on the condition that he doesn't get to play the game, he would be miserable.
Because what we are actually seeking is the agitation. We are seeking an activity that requires just enough of our attention to prevent us from thinking about ourselves.
We need the noise.
We need the noise of the chase to drown out the silence of the infinite spaces.
So if I'm tracking this correctly, our entire society, our entertainment industries, our obsession with career advancement, our social media architecture, it's basically just a giant theater of distraction.
That's exactly what it is.
We use the pursuit of external things to avoid the terrifying reality of our internal selves.
That is the tragic reality of divertissement. True rest, complete stillness is intolerable to the unregenerate mind.
Because what happens when we rest?
Because when everything goes quiet, when the notifications stop and the screen goes black, what happens? We are forced to look at our mortality. We are forced to feel our spiritual bankruptcy.
We have to face the music.
Pascal paints this really vivid picture of a king to prove his point. A king is the most privileged person on earth. He has all the wealth, power, and comfort imaginable.
He's the ultimate success story.
Exactly. He's the peak of human ambition. But Pascal argues, if you take away all his jesters, his games, his courtiers, his wars, and his diplomats...
Just strip it all away.
Right, and you just leave the king completely alone in a room to reflect on what he is, that king will be profoundly miserable.
Even though he has everything.
Because a king without diversion is just a man full of wretchedness, anticipating disease, revolution, and inevitable death.
It's like we are all driving down the highway in an old car.
Yeah.
And suddenly we start to hear this really strange, deep grinding noise coming from the engine.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Intuitively, we know it means something is fundamentally wrong. The car is breaking down. But instead of pulling over to the side of the road, popping the hood, and dealing with the problem, which is stressful, it's expensive, and it forces us to admit we are broken, we just reach over and turn up the car radio.
Yes.
We just blast the music to drown out the noise of the engine. That is what diversion is.
Exactly.
We fill our digital calendars. We constantly scroll on our phones. We buy things we don't even need because if we ever let the silence in, the existential engine noise becomes absolutely deafening. We realize the car is breaking down and we're driving toward a cliff.
That is a phenomenal analogy. It perfectly captures the urgency of Pascal's warning. By turning up the radio, the pursuit of the sovereign good, the ultimate meaning of life, is completely abandoned in favor of cheap, temporary amusement.
We just want to be entertained while the car crashes.
And what's really fascinating here is how deeply this tracks with the biblical sources Pascal was drawing from to build this thematic architecture. The text highlights how this psychological insight is deeply rooted in ancient Hebrew wisdom.
Oh, really? Like who?
Think of Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes. Solomon had the wealth of Pascal's hypothetical king. He had the intellect, the pleasures, the massive building projects, the wives, the political power.
He had everything.
He turned the radio up as loud as any human being in history ever has. And his ultimate conclusion when the music stopped was that all of it is hevel.
Let's talk about that word, hevel. The pronunciation guide in our sources says it's pronounced H-E-H, vel. What does that actually mean?
It's a great word.
Because usually in English Bibles, it just says vanity, like vanity of vanities, all is vanity, which honestly kind of sounds like he's just saying people are too obsessed with their looks or their egos.
Right. Translating it as vanity loses a lot of the visceral impact. Hevel literally translates to a passing vapor, a breath, or a mist.
Oh, a vapor, like Pascal's reed being crushed by a vapor.
Exactly. Solomon is saying that human life under the sun, apart from God, is like trying to grab a handful of smoke.
You just can't hold on to it.
You think you have it, you build your entire life upon it, you find your identity in your career or your wealth, and the moment you close your fist, it vanishes. It is entirely insubstantial. It cannot hold the weight of human expectation.
That is so bleak, but so true.
And this pairs with another Hebrew concept highlighted in the text from the book of Job. The word amal, pronounced M-A-H-L.
How does all fit into the engine noise analogy?
Amal describes a deep, wearisome labor, an inherent trouble or toil that permeates existence.
Just a constant exhaustion.
Right. Pascal echoes this perfectly when he says that even if we were sheltered on all sides, even if our circumstances were completely perfect and we had no external problems, weariness would naturally arise from the depths of the heart.
Because the engine is broken.
Yes, because the soul is alienated from its creator. The engine noise isn't an external problem caused by a bad job or a bad relationship. It's a structural defect in the human condition since the fall.
Okay, so if we can't distract ourselves forever, because eventually the radio breaks, or the car crashes, or the diversion just stops working and the dread seeps back in at 2 a.m., what is the natural next step for a rational human being?
We try to think our way out.
Right. We say, I'm a smart person, I have logic, I can figure out the meaning of life. If distraction fails, surely philosophy can save us.
It's the logical next move.
And this moves us into the next major theme of our deep dive, the limits of reason and the logic of the heart. And spoiler alert, Pascal, one of the greatest scientific minds in history, says human reason is a glorious thing, but it has severe, hard limits.
He does. He is very clear about the limits of reason. And to explain why reason fails to cure our dread, Pascal introduces a vital epistemological divide.
Okay, lay it out for us.
He categorizes two fundamental ways that human beings process reality and truth. He calls them l'esprit de géométrie, which is the mathematical or geometric mind, and l'esprit de finesse, which is the intuitive mind.
Okay, geometry and finesse. When I was reading this part of the source material, I was trying to figure out how these two minds operate in daily life.
It can be tricky to conceptualize.
Right. And the best analogy I could come up with is the difference between reading sheet music and just feeling the rhythm of a song.
Oh, I like that.
The mathematical mind, the geometry, is the person who needs to see the sheet music. They need to analyze the time signature. They need to know exactly what key the song is in. They build their understanding slowly, methodically, by reading every single note on the page in sequence.
Step by step.
But the intuitive mind, the finesse, is the person who could just walk into the room, hear the music playing, and instantly start tapping their foot perfectly to the beat. They don't need the sheet music. They grasp the complex reality of the song all at once, in a single glance.
I think Pascal would highly approve of that analogy.
Oh, good.
The mathematical mind requires sterile definitions and palpable axioms. It builds logically, step by step, inferring one truth from a previous premise.
Like writing a proof in geometry class.
Exactly. It is fantastic for physics, for algebra, for engineering a bridge, but it is incredibly clunky and narrow when dealing with the fluid, complex realities of human existence, morality, or the divine.
It's too rigid.
Way too rigid. The intuitive mind, the finesse, doesn't reason sequentially from basic axioms. It perceives things that are right in front of everybody, but are so subtle, so nuanced, and so numerous that they can't be rigidly defined or put into an equation.
You just have to feel it.
It operates by judgment, by a kind of intellectual feel or holistic grasp.
And this brings us to what has to be the most misquoted, misunderstood line in all of Pascal's writings. Maybe in all of Western philosophy.
Oh, I know exactly which one you're going to say.
The heart has its reasons, of which reason knows nothing. People slap that on greeting cards and use it to justify making terrible, impulsive, romantic decisions.
Oh, constantly.
Like, I know it makes zero logical sense to quit my job and move to Paris for a guy I met yesterday on an app, but hey, the heart has its reasons.
Right, right.
That is absolutely not what Pascal is talking about, is it?
Not at all. It's almost a tragic misunderstanding of his work to reduce it to romantic sentimentality.
So what does he actually mean?
When Pascal uses the word heart, or le cœur in French, he is not talking about blind emotion or irrational passion. He is using it as a precise philosophical term for our faculty of intuitive knowledge.
Intuitive knowledge.
He argues that our most foundational first principles, the very things that our logical reason needs in order to even start working, are known intuitively by the heart.
So wait, if reason can't prove first principles, what exactly is a first principle?
Good question.
Are we talking about things like the fact that time is moving forward, or that three-dimensional space exists, because I can't mathematically prove that I'm not just a brain in a vat hallucinating this entire conversation,
Okay.
but I have to intuitively accept that reality is real in order to function.
That is exactly it. You have hit on the precise examples Pascal uses. Take our knowledge of space or time or number.
Can't prove them.
You cannot logically prove the existence of three-dimensional space using a syllogism. Reason cannot establish those ultimate premises. The heart, our intuitive faculty, apprehends the reality of space, time, and motion instantly.
Like tapping your foot to the beat.
Exactly. Reason then takes those intuitively grasped first principles and builds mathematics and geometry upon them. So reason relies entirely on the heart to give it a starting point.
Oh.
And Pascal applies this directly to theology. He says that saving faith belongs to this intuitive order. It is jus sensible occur God felt by the heart.
You can't math your way to God.
No, you cannot reach a living, transformative relationship with the divine at the end of a geometric proof. It requires a holistic apprehension by the soul.
Yeah, it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's a critique of relying only on our intellect to solve spiritual problems. We can't use an equation to get out of existential dread.
We really can't.
And the sources bring in T.S. Eliot's commentary here, which adds so much flavor to the historical context. Eliot points out that Pascal was taking direct aim at the major secular philosophers of his day.
He absolutely was.
He was aiming at Michel de Montaigne, who Eliot describes as this insidious fog of skepticism who just charms you into doubting everything.
Montaigne was a huge influence, but Pascal saw the danger in him.
But more importantly, he was aiming at René Descartes. Descartes famously said, "I think, therefore I am." And Pascal looked at Descartes and thought he had way too much esprit de géométrie.
Yes, Descartes thought he could build the entire universe, including God, out of sheer, sterile logic.
Like trying to read the sheet music to understand the universe.
Exactly. Pascal essentially views Descartes' project as an exercise in intellectual vanity. Descartes thought he could prove God the way you prove a triangle has three sides.
But a triangle doesn't care about you.
Exactly. Pascal says that even if you succeed, a God of pure geometry isn't a God who loves you or saves you or cares about your misery. Human tools, our logic, our philosophy, are simply too blunt to map out the infinite.
Reason just isn't enough.
Reason alone is insufficient to command ultimate truth. Actually, it's insufficient to even command true respect among human beings.
Oh yes, there is an incredible sociological detail from the text about this. Pascal points out how human society actually functions. And it proves that we secretly know reason isn't enough.
The part about the magistrates.
Yes. He notes that magistrates, judges, and doctors in his day wore these giant, elaborate red robes and fur trimmings and big square caps.
All these ridiculous costumes.
Right. Why do they dress up like that?
Yeah.
Because if a doctor or a judge just walked into a room wearing normal clothes and said, "Here is the rational truth," we wouldn't respect him.
Not at all.
They have to wear costumes to strike our imagination and create the illusion of authority. Because naked human reason isn't enough to compel obedience or belief.
It's a devastating observation about human nature. We are governed by imagination and custom, not by pure rationality. We dress our judges in robes because the law itself is often just arbitrary custom, not absolute rational justice.
If you peel back the robes, it's just a guy.
If you peel back the robes, you just find a flawed human being. And if secular philosophy and human reason are this limited, this fragile, and this reliant on imagination and custom, they cannot possibly serve as the solid ground for our existential salvation.
Okay, let's take a breath here and synthesize where we are in Pascal's architecture. Because we've covered a lot of ground.
You really have.
We are deposed kings, deeply broken, but aware of our lost greatness, trapped between infinites.
Yes.
We try to numb our dread with endless diversions, turning up the car radio, but it never lasts.
The engine noise always comes back.
We try to use our brilliant minds to reason our way to God or meaning, but reason hits a brick wall and tells us we have to rely on the intuition of the heart.
That's the progression, exactly.
But here's where we get to the real crisis point of the deep dive. What if you are listening to this right now and you say, "Okay, Pascal, I get it. My diversions are failing. Reason can't get me there. But my heart doesn't intuit anything."
Right, the skeptic who feels nothing.
I look up at the night sky and I just don't feel God. I have no intuitive faith. I am spiritually numb.
What is the skeptic supposed to do then?
That is the exact existential bottleneck that leads to Pascal's most famous and perhaps his most controversial contribution.
The wage of...
The wager. Pascal intimately understands that you cannot simply command someone to feel something they don't feel. You cannot order the heart to intuit.
Right, you can't force someone to tap their foot to a beat they can't hear.
Exactly. So, for the unconvinced, paralyzed skeptic, he brilliantly shifts the entire framework. He abandons abstract metaphysical proofs of God's existence, which he already proved are useless for salvation, and frames the issue instead as a matter of existential risk and probability.
He goes back to his math roots.
He meets the gamblers and the aristocrats of his day on their own turf. He presents the wager.
Let's lay out the mechanics of the wager. He says to the skeptic, imagine life as a coin toss regarding the existence of God. Heads, God exists. Tails, he doesn't.
Now, the modern agnostic might say, I'm a rational person. There's not enough empirical evidence to decide either way, so I choose not to bet at all. I abstain from the game.
But Pascal says you can't abstain.
Right. You are already embarked on the ship of life. To not bet is to bet against God by default. You are forced to play.
Precisely. It is a forced bet. Since you are alive, your life is already on the table. And since you must play, Pascal says, let's calculate the odds like a rational gambler using probability theory.
Okay, what are the stakes?
What are the stakes? Well, you have your finite life, your worldly pleasures, your current autonomy. These are your finite stakes.
The chips you're playing with.
Right. And what is the potential payout? An eternity of infinite happiness.
So finite risk, infinite reward.
Pascal argues that even if you think the odds of God existing are extremely low, say, 1 in a million basic probability theory dictates that you must risk a finite certainty, your current life, for an infinite uncertainty, eternal joy.
Because the math demands it.
Because whenever there is an infinite payout on the table and only a finite risk, any rational gambler goes all in.
Okay, here is where I have to push back hard. Because I have always struggled with this specific argument.
A lot of people do.
Doesn't this sound incredibly cold and calculating? It sounds like a cynical insurance policy. Like, well, I don't really believe in God, but I'll hedge my bets, go to church, and pretend just in case so I don't go to hell.
I totally understand that reaction.
If you are just faking it to win the infinite jackpot, does an all-knowing God really look at that and say, ah, yes, true saving faith, come on in?
Yeah.
It feels intellectually dishonest.
That is the most common and, frankly, the most valid criticism of the wager. If you read it merely as a final mathematical transaction with God, it does seem cynical.
Yeah, like you're trying to trick God.
But that criticism comes from misreading Pascal's ultimate pastoral goal. The wager is not the end of faith. It is merely the starting line.
Okay, explain that.
Pascal is offering a pastoral cure for unbelief. He isn't saying that calculating the odds equates to saving faith. He is addressing the specific skeptic who says, I see the logic of the wager. I want to believe because it's the rational bet, but my hands are tied. I just don't have faith. My heart is dead.
The person who wants to believe but can't.
Pascal's psychological insight here is profound. He knows you can't just flip a switch in your brain and start believing. So what does he tell the skeptic to do?
He tells them to act like they believe anyway.
He tells them to deaden your acuteness, to abate the passions by practicing the external habits of faith. If you want to believe, but you can't, then start doing the things that believers do.
There's that striking detail from the text where he says, take the holy water, attend the mass, say the prayers, essentially fake it till you make it.
That's the modern phrasing, yes.
But how does going through the motions actually generate true faith? How does taking holy water change the heart?
Because Pascal understands something fundamental about human psychology. Our unbelief is rarely just a matter of lacking intellectual evidence.
We think it is, though.
We like to think we are purely rational creatures holding out for better data, but we aren't. Our unbelief is usually rooted in our passions, our pride, our stubborn self-love, and our desire for autonomy.
We just don't want someone telling us what to do.
We don't want God to exist because we want to be the kings of our own lives, even if we are deposed kings.
Ah, tying it back to the deposed king.
This ties beautifully back to the biblical text cited in the sources, Jeremiah 17:9. Which says, the human heart is deceitful above all things.
The heart is deceitful.
The Hebrew word there is leb, pronounced L-E-H-V, which refers to the very center of human volition and will.
The leb.
Pascal knows that our leb, our will, actively resists God. By taking the holy water, by physically kneeling in Mass, you are using the power of custom and physical habit to slowly break down that pride.
You're humbling your body.
You are humbling your body, which over time humbles the mind and opens the heart.
Wow. So it's not about tricking God, it's about tricking your own stubborn ego into getting out of the way. You are using the blunt instrument of physical habit to quiet the noise of your passions so that your intuitive heart can finally hear that subtle rhythm of truth we talked about earlier.
That's a perfect way to put it.
It's essentially cognitive behavioral therapy applied to 17th century theology. You change the behavior to change the internal belief. The wager gets you off the couch and into the chapel, where genuine grace can finally take root.
It is incredibly modern in its psychological application. Pascal recognizes that we are embodied creatures. We are not just floating brains.
What we do with our bodies matters.
What we do with our bodies shapes what we perceive with our souls. And this transitions us perfectly into the final resolution of his apologia.
The finish line.
Let's say you take the wager. You realize your diversions are failing. You recognize the limits of your reason. You humble yourself, practice the habits, and seek truth with your heart. What, or rather who, does Pascal say you are going to find at the end of that journey?
Right, because he's not just pointing us towards some generic, nameless force in the universe. He's not leading us to the prime mover of Aristotle or the geometric god of Descartes.
No, he is not.
He has a very specific historical destination in mind.
He does. And to understand this destination, we have to look at his concept of the deus absconditus, the hidden God.
The hidden god.
Pascal totally rejects the idea that you can prove God just by pointing at a beautiful sunset or the complexity of a flower.
Why not?
He says nature is ambiguous. It shows signs of God, yes, but also signs of a world abandoned by God, filled with decay and suffering.
Oh, so it's a mixed bag.
Instead, Pascal argues that God operates in a very specific relational way. He provides enough light for those who genuinely seek him with their heart, but he maintains enough obscurity to confound those who rely only on their own prideful intellect.
It is fascinating.
If God were entirely obvious, writing his name in the stars, we wouldn't need faith and we would become arrogant. If he were entirely hidden, we would fall into absolute despair.
It's that delicate balance again. He is providing just enough light for the finesse, the intuitive heart, but not enough absolute proof for the geometry, the mathematical mind.
Exactly.
And that balance is perfectly realized, according to Pascal's grand architecture, in the person of Jesus Christ. The text makes it clear that Christ is the exact middle course that solves the human paradox.
If we connect this back to everything we've discussed today, the grandeur and the misery, the Stoics and the skeptics, the infinite cosmos and the might Christ, is the only key that unlocks the paradox.
How so?
Pascal writes that the knowledge of God without the knowledge of man's misery causes pride. That's the philosopher's trap, the Stoic's trap.
Right.
But the knowledge of man's misery without God causes despair. That's the atheist's trap, the skeptic's trap. Jesus Christ is the exact middle course because in him we find both the staggering reality of our wretchedness and the immense reality of God's grace.
And you see that wretchedness so clearly in the Christian narrative of the crucifixion.
You really do.
God himself enters into the absolute lowest point of human misery. He experiences the weariness, the amal, the feeling of being crushed by the universe. But at the exact same time, it is the ultimate display of divine love and greatness.
It bridges the two abysses we talked about at the very beginning.
Christ unites the infinite grandeur of God with the microscopic misery of the human condition.
Precisely. But Pascal knows that to the purely mathematical mind, the esprit de géométrie, a crucified God makes absolutely zero logical sense.
It's a scandal.
He brings in the biblical grounding for this from the Apostle Paul in the first letter to the Corinthians. The message of the cross is seen as foolishness by the secular, rational world.
Foolishness.
The Latin term Pascal uses is stultitium, and the Greek from the New Testament is moria, pronounced mor-re. It's actually where we get the English word moron.
Oh, wow, really?
Yes, to the perishing, purely geometric world, Christianity looks moronic. Pascal actually argues that if Christians could mathematically prove their faith, they would be liars.
That is wild.
Because they profess a religion that is fundamentally based on what the world considers foolishness.
That is such a mic drop moment for an apologist. We can't prove it mathematically, and if we could, you shouldn't believe us, because our central claim is a paradox that defies earthly logic.
It's brilliant.
But he does believe there is evidence, right? It's just evidence that appeals to the heart rather than to geometric logic.
Yes. The evidence he points to is historical and prophetic. He looks at the vast sweep of history, particularly the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecies, and the miraculous survival of the Jewish people through centuries of dispersion and persecution.
He sees history as the evidence.
He views these historical realities as a lasting miracle. It is not a sterile mathematical equation written on a chalkboard. It is a living, breathing, historical testimony that strikes the intuitive mind, the heart, confirming that God is active in the messy reality of human history.
The light in the darkness.
The fulfillment of prophecy is the light that the hidden God provides for the seeking heart.
So what does this all mean for us today? Let's synthesize this incredible journey we've just been on through the mind of Blaise Pascal.
It's been quite a ride.
We started by looking up at the terrifying silence of the infinite spaces, feeling completely lost and out of proportion. We learned that we are thinking reeds, incredibly fragile, ready to be crushed by a drop of water, yet possessing a dignity greater than the entire universe because we have consciousness.
That beautiful paradox.
We saw that we are deposed kings, caught between a lingering memory of greatness and the daily reality of profound, broken wretchedness. Because we can't handle the tension of that paradox, we run.
We turn up the radio.
We run into our phones, our jobs, our social dramas, our addictions, endless diversions to drown out the engine noise of our own mortality. We try to use rigid mathematical reason to save ourselves, but reason hits a wall, forcing us to listen to the quiet, intuitive music of our hearts.
And for the skeptic,
Right, for the skeptic, we are challenged to place our wager, to break down our stubborn pride through physical habit, and ultimately, we find our paradoxical nature perfectly resolved, perfectly understood, only in the person of Christ. It is a stunning, comprehensive architecture of what it means to be a human being.
it is a diagnosis that remains as razor-sharp and relevant today as it was in the 1600s. Pascal holds up a mirror to our souls, and he refuses to let us look away from the cracks.
He makes us look.
He forces us to acknowledge our wretchedness, our diversions, and our limits. But he doesn't leave us in the dark. He points us toward a profound, eternal rest for our restless souls.
He gives us a way out.
He does. And so, drawing on Pascal's own challenge, I want to leave you with a direct, practical provocation today.
Oh, I love good challenge.
When this audio finishes and the silence returns, do not immediately jump to another task. Do not turn on a video. Do not start an endless scroll on your phone. Turn off the car radio. Sit in a quiet room, completely alone for just 5 minutes. Face the silence of the infinite spaces without any diversion. Will you run back to your distractions to drown it out? Or will you allow that terrifying quiet to become the space where the hidden God finally speaks to your heart?